Welcome to Mind Matters, and thank you for joining Dan Ploger and myself, John Krotek. This podcast is where we discuss the critical social, economic, and spiritual issues that affect all of us. We, the people, are in a battle against the forces of entropy, forces that are hell-bent on gaining power for personal reasons, forces hell-bent on destroying the concepts of freedom and individual thought, forces which don't benefit the social order. Thank you again. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Hey, John, good to see you.
I was saying we got to quit meeting like this, man. People are going to start talking like us. The subject today is one that has been talked about for a long, long time, for decades, really. It's, Joe Biden, the arts of embellishment and plagiarism. And, the real question is not really about him. Well, maybe him as the president, but we need to ask ourselves, does lying still matter? In light of all the things that President Joe Biden has done with these behaviors in the past. In fact, this habit of embellishing and actually lying, stretching the truth, his record goes back a long, long time ago to when he was in law school. And what's interesting is the supporters of his tell us that the kinds of things that he does, or the lies or the embellishments, they're things that don't really matter. But the question is,
like being Puerto Rican.
Yeah, but plagiarism, lying is lying. Whether you're embellishing, which I agree may or may not matter, but it's the plagiarism and it's the outright level. Certainly, let's be fair, presidents and people in the past, including ourselves, have embellished things, but I don't think, never to this extent. I mean, this guy has stolen the work of others, speeches, and he's told lies and he's spun yarns for a long, long time.
I remember. Joe Biden and I go back to, when was it, 74 or something like that. When it was fairly early on, when he was accused of and was discovered that he actually stole a speech from a English diplomat or politician of some sort, almost word for word. I was brought up, and it was hammered in my head in school that plagiarism was the worst damn thing you could do. I mean, they made it out to something even worse than it is, I suppose, which is just theft. But it has to do with a more fundamental belief, in the belief that intellectual property belongs to the originator. And that is both true legally and morally. And this just is a revealing character flaw of Joe Biden. And I wrote him off. I wrote him off as a blowhard from Delaware, and who was instrumental in setting up the credit card system, where credit cards can charge 24% interest. He had absolutely, in my opinion, he was just a product of the system. He was just a perfect product of the system. And it reveals what can go wrong with the system. But it reveals a character flaw, and I just written him off. But more importantly, it reflects a moral character flaw in the people who elected him. That's the scary part.
Yeah, well said. And it's not just, when you do the research, it's not just one speech or one piece of intellectual property. Joe Biden has done it many, many, many times. And if you do the research, you'll see that this is a serious habit. And when you're the president of the United States of America, I mean, most relationships that I know, most solid relationships, are built on the issue and the concept of trust. So if we just write off embellishment, spinning yarns, and things that are not true, and stealing other people's work as being okay, that is scary, because it moves into a realm of living that if you can't trust anyone, then what's the reason for this existence? As far as a society goes, a human race, if we can't trust, my gosh, we are in a dangerous place. We might as well all bunker in place right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Yes, I agree.
It's and some of the things, whenever I've embellished something, or whenever I've told an untruth, and I'll come right out and say it, who hasn't, or I have. My wife always says to me, well, why? Telling people that you have graduated at the top of your class and all these different things that Joe Biden has said. The plagiarism is one thing, and stealing intellectual property, but these other bizarre tales, just they don't make sense. He's got no reason to do it. So maybe the character flaw that you talk about, that's rooted in the plagiarism, comes to just about everything the guy does. So, can you believe anything that Joe Biden says?
And my answer to that is no. I wrote him off in the 70s because of his actions. I judge a man not by what he says, but by what he does. And he was never a viable option for me. He just never was. And it was a shock when they picked him to be the Democratic nominee. And it's clear now in retrospect what's going on. You're dealing with a feeble-minded individual who is so obviously enthralled with having achieved presidential status that he now lives in his world, but he believes that's a world that everybody else lives in too. And it's just not the case. The poor man is delusional. He's senile and delusional. And he was picked because he was an obedient mouthpiece, a useful idiot, as somebody much smarter than me described it. And it's a shame. It's a shame that our system of elections and system of government was able to produce somebody this unqualified and unworthy. And even to the extent that he didn't campaign, he sat in his basement. So every time he opened his mouth, he wouldn't come out with a pony soldier comment.
Or
So,
if you're not, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, or how did it go? And
yeah.
you raise a really good point, because it is fear factor, or this scary factor that there's actually people out there who would condone lying for personal gain. Well, no, it's not even a surprise. It's just the way,
not even that.
It's the way people are,
It's lying for the purpose of destabilizing our government. That's
Yeah. And when they talk about, we live in this age of emotions and feelings, and quite honestly, that's true. But an age of emotions and feelings still has to have trust. It still has to have core value sets. It still has to have the very basic tenets of a relationship and a faith in each other and in government. And that's, there's no words to even describe. I mean, nefarious, diabolical, scheming, all of these words. That's what it is. I mean, let's quit sugarcoating it. I'm even wondering these days if the FBI, because of these conversations, is not going to come knock on my door, and it's going to be condoned because we confront trustworthiness from a person in our country's highest office. I mean, and it's the trickle down effect. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see the lack of trustworthiness in a lot of people in government, and even in some of these organizations, these law enforcement agencies that are supposed to dole out equal justice. It's anything but.
I don't know. We're seeing something that is irrational behavior. The fact that all of the Democrats can be counted on to support a president's bill is awful. And the idea that all Republicans will oppose it, which seems to suggest to me who's pulling the strings of these voting congressmen that they go along with every suggestion that comes out that their party supports. So what is the use of having all of these congressmen and 100 senators when all we need is one representative from each party? So we could have the president, we could have the Supreme Court, and we could have two enlightened individuals from each party that represent that party's views. So it looks to me like our congressmen and senators have usurped their power to go along with party lines, and they've usurped any reason for being an individual through doing this. It's disgraceful.
It is disgraceful, and I can, after reading the United States Constitution and getting into the head of the founding fathers, they certainly didn't envision it this way. That's putting it mildly. When you usurp your individuality for the collective, for greediness, or for this this craving for power, then you end up with what we got. And there's no doubt in my mind the United States of America is moving and inching towards tyranny in its worst state.
Yeah, and there doesn't seem to be much pushback against this. The opposing party, the Senate. What have you heard from the Republicans? Nothing. Not a damn thing.
Crickets.
Crickets.
You know what I will say, though?
They're all afraid. It's a quid pro quo that if you support the party line, you will receive funding for your reelection. That's the quid pro quo.
But there is hope, I think. Look at Tulsi Gabbard just yesterday.
Oh, wasn't that wonderful?
Oh my gosh. That's like music to a patriot's ears, that somebody has the courage. God bless her, because what she did took tremendous amount of courage and what we could say intestinal fortitude. But her belief in this country and her love for this country is evident in the move she just made. Yep. That's what we need more of. I mentioned the crickets from the Republicans and the vocalness of the Democrats. And you're right, Dan. That's where we're at. It's a craving for power. You either keep your mouth shut or point fingers. You go along with the party line. And I think there are a group of people somewhere calling the shots. People have called them the handlers or whatnot. Globalist, communist, socialist, those are just labels we place on collectivism. But the reality is this country was based and formed on God-given rights and freedoms that aren't afforded to us by any government anywhere. And when we forget that, we move into an environment that does nothing to help individuals or humanity as a whole. It's all about a select group of people who just crave power and are so greedy beyond the normal value sets.
and want to hold on to that power at any cost. That's what we're seeing, and it's a shame. It's coming from both sides. Both sides are guilty. What we're talking about ought to be something that's talked about on the floor of the Senate, but it's not, and it never will. We've seen one of the horrible things we've seen in the recent years.
In the past, we used to talk about if a lie was exposed or if a lie was vocalized. In pretty short order was usually quashed because people would use common sense and logic and reason, and it would stand out like a sore thumb. But nowadays, there's so much meshing and commingling of these untruths that nobody really knows what's true anymore. And the fact checkers that are checking the facts are the people that are spewing the lies. So we're living in this technological digital age of just sheer bullshit. And
the chief medical officer of the state of Florida yesterday or day before was kicked off of Twitter by a tweet that he sent showing the results of his research that the vaccines probably should not have been administered to people in the middle age groups because of myo and pericarditis. I've had pericarditis, and let me tell you, that is no fun.
I mean, with the facts about all kinds of things have been coming out. And the sad part is, and everybody knows it, everybody feels you do come out and speak out, you're quashed by big tech, by these social media companies that are also in on the scheme. And that's what it is. It's a global scheme to rob individuals of freedom. And most of these people, from what I understand, they don't even believe in a spiritual being or a higher power. And without passing judgment, me personally, if you don't even have a conscience, which I think that is, you'll do anything to want to get power and then hold on to power. The amount of fentanyl coming in at the border, all of these vaccines that were administered against people's wills, the shutting down of mom and pop shops while they let the big stores stay open, and the list of stuff, the race riots. Are you kidding me? There's people they're having their door stomped in for their spiritual beliefs, pro-life beliefs, but yet you can go out and you can burn down a whole city block and pretty much get away with it as long as you scream it's for social justice. We moved into a crazy, crazy time, not just in American politics, but in global politics, because I'm hearing from friends in Australia that the government there is really clamped down. We're hearing from it in England. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on right now.
Yeah, there is. And it all seems to be in one direction. It seems to be in the direction of power, of governmental power over the people they represent.
Well, I have to agree with Tulsi. These people, I guess if you put a label on them, I just did, these globalists, communists, socialists, elitists, they're all names. And I don't want to hurt your feelings, but if you're lying, then sorry, so be it, because lies are a scourge upon human relationships. They do nothing to help promote a healthy global society. And no, you can't take any of that stuff with you. You can't take power with you when it's time to go meet your maker. And you can't take money with you when it's time to go meet your maker. So there is a reckoning, and there is something that we will all experience someday, and it's called the deathbed. And I certainly would love to go there with a clear conscience rather than knowing that I did something to destroy people's lives and people's freedoms. There's a place for tyrants and liars who subvert the freedoms of others. They have no right to do that. So we keep embellishing, we keep telling lies, we keep playing this power grab game. And I think sooner or later, it just runs into a headwind. And The power has always been with the people, Dan.
What this idea of trust, that's an interesting idea. Uh, the the newscasting companies, the main media, has willfully given away the trust that people held in their reporting. Wow, that's it seems like a self-defeating philosophy, but there's something more behind it. There's a reason that the NBC, ABC, CBS, and the group are willing, have been willing to break the trust, any trust relationship they had with their audience. That's pretty incredible. If your bank did that, you'd pull every cent out of your bank.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I can remember growing up as a kid, the 60s and 70s, and you could pretty much trust the three major networks that were on. But now, you got the three networks that have been co-opted, and you have what, a couple hundred or more news outlets. Do they lean left? Do they lean right? Are they centrist? You can't even trust the news anymore.
No,
I mean, journalism has taken a backseat to the truth. And maybe you're right. Maybe Joe Biden is an example of where we're headed as a human race of liars,
of impotent leaders. Because I would describe Joe as, if he wasn't dangerous, so dangerous is just impotent. So I told you 2 weeks ago that the focus of this election, the Democrats were going to turn it to nuclear war. This is exactly what they've done.
You did say that. I remember that.
So that's what the Democrats are going to make this election about. That do you want to keep the people in power that can protect us from nuclear extinction or not? And that's what it's come down to. It's an absolutely absurd position.
With all due respect, the second option, the next person in command of the what many consider to be the strongest military in the world, is somebody who is equally as impotent and incompetent. And I don't say that lightly, because it's the truth. And I don't know how somebody who didn't even get the support of their own party at the convention ends up as the vice president of the United States. And I also believe in forgiveness, right? But I saw the other day on television where Kamala Harris said that she absolutely loved Joe Biden, the same person that a year and a half earlier she called him a racist and dangerous to America. Wow, what they do, kiss and make up? I mean, come on, that's some pretty high powered. To go from hating somebody and calling them racist to within a year and a half that you love them. I mean, I don't know. I don't believe her. I think she's another one that falls into the category of an embellisher. Gosh, it's madness.
Oh Lord, yeah. And her perspective of the world is so narrow. It's so narrow. It's embarrassing to me.
Oh, gosh, that's hey.
That I remember somebody like that.
The Ukrainian invasion, everybody. Russia is a country in Europe, and Ukraine is a country in Europe. Russia's bigger than Ukraine. The bigger country attacked the smaller country. I mean, what does she think? That the general population is in the fourth grade?
Well, when she was in South Korea here last week, she said that we have a very important defense agreement with the North Koreans.
Paid attention. I knew where North and South Korea were when I was in the 7th grade.
Yeah.
I had a fantastic teacher. Her name was Mrs. Walinda in Sarasota, Florida, Brookside Junior High School. And she had a huge map hanging from the ceiling of every country in the world. And it was awesome. We learned the capitals, and we learned what the countries were. This is the vice president. And she's like, she doesn't even know which country she's in or which country she's talking about.
Or talking to. Imagine how, we just excuse it as a slip. Imagine what the South Koreans think with that type of a slip. That's,
Well,
to us, it's amusing. To them, it's got to be frightening.
I believe that we are the last vestige of hope for the entire free world. And man, I've got to think that there's going to be an intervention somewhere, and that we can take this back for ourselves, for we the people.
Well, I would be optimistic and say, well, if we can just wait till the midterms. But I don't find any solace in that, because what have the Republicans done? They've done nothing. They say, just get us in power and look at what we're going to do. All right, they're going to prosecute this person and that person. But we all know that if you're in Washington and you're prosecuted, nothing ever happens to you.
The story just appears. Yeah.
Ray of the FBI, the truth doesn't matter anymore. So
we've lost sight. When I say this, I said that the leadership has lost sight of what their duty is and their oath and commitment to the United States Constitution. And I don't think that Tulsi Gabbard could have put it any clearer yesterday, that she takes that oath very seriously. And I know you, as a combat veteran, you understand what freedom is all about, and you understand what this country's precepts are all about, and myself included. And I would like to think that most Americans feel like we do. And I would also like to think that most people around the world think about their individual freedoms and rights, and want to live their lives without the choker of tyranny constantly dragging them down, ruining their lives, taking their hard-earned shekels, and basically creating a world that nobody wants to live in.
Except them, except those in power. And that's the key to socialism that nobody talks about. Problem with socialism is somebody's at the top making all the decisions. And that group gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it'll never work out. Never has, never will. And somehow there's this big push to make these changes towards tyranny. And tyranny's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen one bite at a time. The freedom of speech is already under severe attack, to where it could be argued that we no longer have freedom of speech in this country.
We need to keep the faith. Lying does matter, whether we're being told that it doesn't. We think that those who are elected are always acting in our best interest, and what we're finding out every day with the amount of fentanyl and the amount of stuff that's going on with human trafficking at our border and being loose with our word, Armageddon. And I don't know. I'm all about forgiveness, and I'm all about emotions, and being compassionate and sometimes empathetic, but I don't want to fall into that trap either, to where I let my good common sense and my logic and reason get usurped by people that don't tell the truth, that embellish everything and lie. All I can say is this, Dan. I feel very fortunate to be an American. I'm very grateful to be living in this country. And it pains me to see what's been going on, at least for the last couple of years. And although I'm not the most staunch Trump supporter, I will say that gas that was less expensive and food that didn't cost as much and a secure border means something. And if they don't mean something to you as a fellow American, then I'd have to question whether or not you believe in the U.S. Constitution. And if you don't, then maybe there's an issue between us.
Yeah, maybe that's something I'd like to know.
And that's what I keep can't it drives me nuts when people say how bad off it was under the last administration and how they can tie everything back now, this current administration, to four things. It's a problem because Trump was there. It's a problem because Putin invaded Ukraine. It's a problem because of global warming, or COVID-19 created this black cloud. So this administration has lashed on. Oh, and racism. Let's not forget that, the blanket word that you use for white people when you don't agree with what they say. So there you go. Instead of the four horsemen, it's the five horsemen, and I'm not buying it. I'm not going to fall for that trap, and I will always believe in the Constitution and we the people.
And if you believe in the scientific method, you can and understand what it means. You can critically think your way out of these situations. The solutions that are being presented are not the ones in the best interest of the people that are being ruled in this case. Not represented, ruled.
Yeah, because your mind does matter. And we just implore you. We thank you first for listening, but we also implore you to use it. Quit buying into the lies. The corn pop, probably not that bad. Anyhow, I don't want to go there. But any final thoughts, Dan?
No, I think we pretty covered it. We pretty well covered it, John.
Well, good seeing you, man. I'll talk to you next time. Keep the faith, and thanks for listening.
All righty. Good talking.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Mind Matters. Use your critical thinking. Use logic and reason. Make your own determinations on the critical issues. Stay alert. Stay alive.